Hello and welcome. Several persons injured as gas tanker explodes in Ijuajunwon area of Lagos. Dialogue between federal government and organized labor over planned strike and protest against petrol and electricity price hike continues. President Muhammadu Buhari gives assurance that newly signed Companies and Allied Matters Act will enhance transparency, accountability and fight against corruption. Federal government to celebrate Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary on a low key due to COVID-19 pandemic. And US Republican leader Mitch McConnell promises orderly post-election transition regardless of who wins the November the 3rd presidential election. Plus we'll have business, sports and later on news from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, over 330,000 artisans to benefit from 75 billion naira MSME Survival Fund announced by the federal government with effect from October the 1st.
On sports news tonight, Nigerian UFC middleweight champion Israel Adesanya says he is levels above Paulo Costa and he will prove it against the Brazilian at UFC 253.
Less than 24 hours after a fuel tanker explosion killed about 28 people in Kogi State, another explosion occurred today, this time involving a gas tanker in the Ijuajunwon area of Lagos. No fewer than 50 persons sustained various degrees of injury, with about 16 of them said to be in critical condition. The explosion also destroyed about 10 vehicles, motorcycles and other property. Well, our correspondent Olu Phillips is live at the scene of the explosion and he joins us now if he can, or he will join us pretty soon from the scene of that explosion just to give us an update on what is happening at the moment, and we'll do that shortly. Meanwhile, the death toll from the Lokoja tanker fire incident has risen to 28, and the state governor, Yahya Bello, is asking the federal government to prioritize the fixing of the damaged portion of the Lokoja highway where the incident happened. Governor Bello made the appeal today during a meeting with the vice president at the State House in Abuja. He says the Minister of Works and Housing has instructed the Federal Road Maintenance Agency to begin fixing the road at Felele and complete the rehabilitation of the Murtala Mohammed Bridge in anticipation of heavy traffic as the year comes to an end. The governor had declared a 2-day statewide mourning in honor of the victims of the tanker explosion.
It's an accident. It can happen at any point in time. And the minister swiftly, invited all that are concerned as far as our road construction and reconstruction and rehabilitations are concerned, and has directed that FEMA moved into that spot immediately, and fixed those areas. Not only that, the road that is coming from Okene to Lokoja down to Abaji, between Kaba to Egbe, Umuarang to Ilorin, and Ganaja to Ganaja village, across to Shintaku, to Dekina and Spor Anyamba. He has taken them very seriously, and he has promised that they'll be well funded this time around. And also the rehabilitation of Murtala Mohammed Bridge. You know that we are using only one lane there now. So he has actually called the contractors to ensure that they speedily complete that project in view of the ember month that we are in now. You recall sometimes last September, July also, that I was, on the road for 5 hours controlling traffic, in that area. So he expressed his concern also that moving forward, federal government is going to fund the various contractors to ensure that those road infrastructures are completed. They are doing excellently very well in the infrastructure, road infrastructure across the country. But we want more attention to be paid to Kogi State because it is the gateway between the north and south.
Let's now bring you a bit more about the gas tanker explosion that occurred in Lagos today. It destroyed about 10 vehicles, motorcycles, and other property, and over 50 people sustained various degrees of injury.
It's already gone past 3 p.m. when residents of Ijuajuwon were suddenly jolted by the sound of an explosion from a private gas depot. Residents scamper for safety as the fire spread so far as 400 meters away, consuming several cars along the way. Safety officials explain how the fire started.
There was a controversy, a dispute between Imana Gas and the truck owner, who brought the gas to them, because the seal had been tampered. There used to be a manufacturer's seal from where it is being loaded. So this supervisor at Mana Gas, who is to take custody of the gas, delivery of the gas, said it's been tampered with, compromise, so he's not going to take it. It is with that annoyance the driver of the truck was coming out of this access, and suddenly the front tire busted. In the process, the gear section, is under the cabin, hits the concrete, and there was an explosion. There was a spark. It was this spark that provoked gas explosion along the seal that had been tampered. Of course, there have been gradual leakage on its way from Mana to this point. So I hope if there hadn't been any gradual leakage or the seal had not been tampered, even if there is a tire burst and there is a spark, we wouldn't have had this kind of explosion.
According to the officials, over 20 persons have been injured in the inferno, some in critical condition. In spite of the danger associated with such an explosion, some residents still can be seen hovering around the scene of the accident. This is another sad occurrence about the dangers posed by trucks carrying petroleum products to citizens. Many would expect that the authorities will unravel the cause of this accident with a view to preventing such from ever happening again.
Away from the explosion, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, says the challenge of insecurity confronting Nigeria is threatening its existence and undermining the faith of the public in the government's ability to protect lives and property. The Speaker made the comments today at an event in the nation's capital, Abuja, where he explained that citizens expect the government to fulfill its constitutional responsibility of protecting them, with the notion that such responsibility is the exclusive preserve of the executive, forgetting that the legislature also plays a major role in security matters. He says this knowledge gap limits policy making and the oversight role of the legislature as it pertains to security. He's also calling for a clear definition of the roles of all security agencies to enhance their effectiveness, while pledging the support of the legislature to the accomplishment of their set goals. Now, the federal government again met with leaders of the organized labor today with the intention to avert the planned industrial action by the unions. At the opening of the dialogue, the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, appealed to the unionists to see reasons with the federal government, noting that the decision to remove fuel subsidy and increase electricity tariff is inevitable. But the organized labor is insisting that the government should reverse its decision on the prices of fuel and electricity tariff before negotiations can continue. Both parties could not reach a conclusion today, as they have adjourned talks till Monday, September the 28th, when the strike is scheduled to commence.
It is the second meeting between the federal government, leaders of the Nigeria Labour Congress, and the Trade Union Congress at the banquet hall in the presidential villa. It is 4 days to the planned nationwide industrial action and protest by the organized labor, and this meeting is aimed at averting the actions.
I would want to remark that I had the privilege of serving on the transition committee when President Buhari was elected in 2015. And I remember the decisions that we are confronted with today were things that that transition committee considered as low-hanging fruits in 2015. So if 5 years down the ladder, that decision has become imperative and cannot be escaped.
Yes, we have gotten those communiques and we are addressing the issues attendant thereto. With that, we think we can resolve the issues and nobody will be in the mood to go on strike or go on demonstrations in the street.
Meanwhile, the Labour leaders insist that the government should reverse its decision before calling for negotiation, as the recent increment has eroded the value of the new minimum wage.
These two increases have also reduced our purchasing power and eroded the gains we have been able to make with the 30,000 minimum wage, where as we speak, more than 1/3 of the states are not paying, or the payment have also had some difficulty.
The submission of TUC as at last week still remain. That you reverse all those increases, then you can come up with economic solutions, economic recovery solutions that you have. I know many times we have advised you to diversify the economy.
After those remarks from the government and the Labour leaders, the meeting then enters a technical session as journalists are excused. The Labour movement had threatened to embark on a nationwide protest and industrial action on Monday, September the 28th, to demonstrate their rejection of the recent hike in the price of fuel and electricity.
Let's get a bit more information about that gas tanker explosion in the Ijuajuwon area of Lagos today. Our correspondent Olu Phillips is at the scene of that explosion. Olu, what can you tell us now?
Thank you, AJ. It's all quiet and calm here at the incident around the Ijuajuwon area where we had a gas explosion earlier today. All the first responders are away, the fire service guys are away, the police are away. We are just here still milling around and trying to find out to see if we can find some piece of evidences here and there of what may really have happened here earlier today. And we're beginning to find out certain things. Now, for instance, sometime 30-40 minutes ago, I saw a young lady milling around and I asked her what the problem was. Apparently, she was traumatized. And this is what is remaining of what used to be a two-bedroom flat. Now, this is where the girl's room is. The other one is her father's room. And right there in the middle there, you can't see very clearly because all dark here is the living room that is adjacent to this church. And this building has been pulled down by the impact of that gas explosion. And Christy, this young lady, is one of it's an occupant here with the mom herself, her sibling and the mom. And right now as we speak, earlier we had to take her to the hospital. She's one of those people that were not captured in those who are casualties for this casualty of this event. And I spoke to Christy. She's a bit traumatized, and she for her and her family, they don't have anywhere right now to sleep. And I thought to bring Christy up on air tonight on News at 10 live here. Christy was returning from work this afternoon around 2 p.m. when it happened, and Christy tells me that the gas truck that exploded today apparently had brought gas since yesterday. Now, there was an argument that ensued between the supplier and the person and the gas depot where they were delivering the gas yesterday. Now, I understand also that the retailer said to the gas supplier that this gas is not full enough, and apparently it seemed like there was a shady deal. The driver argued and made all of that arguments to say that no, we didn't shortchange you. Now, that argument dovetailed into this morning, and they asked him to either return the gas back to the company or they will not pay for it. Now, that argument continued, and the driver had to leave. They had to get another driver to come pick up the gas truck to drive off. Apparently, the driver who was taking it off didn't understand the terrain very well. He sunk just at the exit point into the main road, and as he tried to screech out, his tire kept digging in and it ignited the truck. Now, two things. Christy, first of all, when this happened, how did you feel and what happened? I understand your dad is also injured, and tell me a bit in 1 minute.
I was just really scared. All I was just I was walking at a skater so I could find my mom. If I could find my mom because her shop was right in front of where the explosion happened. So I was just running at a skater for my mom. That was what I was after. So I just started running and running. When I saw that the explosion was getting worse, it was worsening. I just ran and kept on running.
Where, do you know where your dad is right now?
Yes, my dad is with his friends. They're taking care of him.
He was also injured?
Yes, he was also injured from the incident.
You told me that this is your room.
Yes, this is my room. My dad, our parlor, everything is crumbled. We are here homeless. No place to stay this night. We are still here hoping for a miracle to happen.
All right. So two things are fundamental here. The attitude of the citizens when incidents like this happen. What we saw earlier is that when this gas explosion started triggering into fire, we saw people moving towards that incident, and that's clearly what not to do when you have a gas fire incident. And also for the government and first responders, how do you manage those who are victims? How do you manage and how do you get those who are concerned? Christy is one of those people that have not been captured. Herself and her family, we had to take her to the hospital earlier today to give her some injections, anti-tetanus and all of that. This is the situation here at the fire incident, and we're hoping that all of this can be made right in no sooner rather than later.
Thanks a lot for that, Olu. Pretty sad there for who he's standing there with, but thanks a lot in the meantime. And in part two, after the break, President Muhammadu Buhari gives assurance that the newly signed Companies and Allied Matters Act will enhance transparency, accountability, and fight against corruption. That's in a moment. Please join us again. The National Industrial Court in Abuja has issued an interim order restraining the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress from embarking on their planned strike over the increase in the price of petrol and electricity tariff. Justice Ibrahim Galadima issued the interim order following an ex parte application filed by a group, Peace and Unity Ambassadors Association. Justice Galadima also ordered the labour unions, their officers and affiliate groups to halt the planned strike pending the hearing and determination of the motion on notice filed by the applicant. The judge also granted an order of interim injunction restraining the unions from disrupting, restraining, picketing or preventing workers or ordinary Nigerians from accessing their offices to carry out their legitimate duties on Monday, September the 28th or any other date. President Muhammadu Buhari has again defended the Companies and Allied Matters Act 2020, which he recently signed into law, saying it would enhance transparency and corporate accountability and help the fight against corruption. In a message presented at the Open Government Partnership 2020 Virtual Leaders Summit on the sidelines of the 75th session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, the President explains that his administration has been committed to changing international and domestic perceptions regarding Nigeria's commitment to fight corruption and foster good governance. According to him, being an OGP member country has helped Nigeria learn from other countries tackling similar challenges and to build a coalition to support these reforms across the private sector and civil society. It has also aided our journey towards building citizens' trust in government. On the COVID-19 pandemic, the President believes it's become clear that governments cannot solve all the challenges of the pandemic alone, insisting that it's only through open governance and working with citizens that nations can succeed. The Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Abubakar Malami, has said that his non-appearance at the Justice Ayo Salami panel of inquiry probing the suspended acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ibrahim Magu, was purely constitutional and not based on any ulterior motive. The minister said in a statement that in establishing the propriety or otherwise of the presence of the AGF and Minister of Justice, whose responsibility is to hold constitutional order, one must root same within the constitutional provisions. The statement adds that the terms and wordings of the invitation extended to the Attorney General of the Federation to the panel of inquiry against Mr. Magu runs contrary to the constitutional provisions. It explains further that the office of the AGF and Minister of Justice is by provision of the Constitution and extant laws empowered to serve supervisory roles, which it is already doing in the case of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission. Now we move on to Edo State, where Governor Godwin Obaseki says it's time for the South-South region to take responsibility for its own development rather than leaving everything to the NDDC, which he says has failed to deliver on its mandate. Governor Obaseki made the comments during a reception in his honor at the Government House in Uyo, the Akwa Ibom state capital. The visit is part of his thank you tour of the South-South in appreciation of the support he got from governors during the just concluded Edo State governorship election.
In a post-COVID economy, in a post-COVID world, in a world that is going to be determined by the fourth industrial revolution, you have a great role to play. Our Breast Commission has been almost comatose. We'll be relying on you and our chairman to please help us resuscitate our Breast Commission. Be rest assured that we will provide all the support from Edo State. We can no longer accept a situation where our own commission, the NDDC, is so aseptic as it has become and is not playing the role it is supposed to play. And it's been so because we have not come together as we should have as a sub-region to take our fate in our hand and determine our future ourselves.
To thank God Almighty. Probably we wouldn't have been here if the story was to be different. We are here because we have a story to tell. I don't care what happens tomorrow, but for today, in this region, we've rewritten the history of democracy in Nigeria. And I said so before, that we have a platform now to negotiate. I think over the years, we've kept quiet too much. And they believe as if we don't matter in Nigeria. I think we do. I think we do. I don't want to go so much into national issues, but let me cut it there. I'm sure we made a statement and they will start to respect us the more. And I believe we do. Continue to give him the support that my people are giving me. If a governor does not have support, forget it. He needs those people as a pillar.
The River State Governor Nyesom Wike has promised that the over 200-bed Mother and Child Specialist Hospital in Port Harcourt will be used before the end of the year to serve mothers and children in the state. He explains that the specialist hospital was originally conceptualized as a regional hospital in partnership with the Niger Delta Development Commission, but the state had to embark on it exclusively after the interventionist agency reneged on its part to kickstart the project. He adds that the NDDC has refunded the initial 400 million naira the state paid for the project. The governor also inspected the ongoing construction of the Rumoba flyover bridge. Our correspondent Jeffrey Uzongo reports.
The far front is finished for maintenance.
Governor Nyesom Wike and his executive council on the move to inspect ongoing projects in the state capital. And their first port of call is the over 200-bed Mother and Child Specialist Hospital in Port Harcourt. The completed structure has been installed with modern medical facilities ahead of its commissioning later in the year. From the X-ray room, the wards, playground for kids, delivery rooms and other important areas, the health commissioner shows the governor around the health facility. From the Mother and Child Specialist Hospital, Governor Wike leads his team to the Rumogba Flyover Bridge, popularly known as Artillery Junction, to see the progress of work done on the multi-billion naira project. For Governor Wike, the Mother and Child Hospital, which was originally conceptualized as a regional hospital in partnership with the NDDC, will begin operation by the end of the year. noting that he is also satisfied with the progress of work at the Rumagba Bridge.
This is the first modern child hospital you can have in the entire South. So, and that tells you that it's a specialist hospital that take care of the children and our mothers. And what we intend to do is to see that it's attached to the teaching hospital so that we can have doctors who will also be trained in that place. And from what we've seen, it's amazing. If in the next 1 month, all the equipments have been installed and the furnitures are in place, so that we'll be able to put it to use.
The River State government has been embarking on a couple of projects since the inception of the Wike-led administration, and the state chief executive maintains that despite the odds, all projects started by his government will be completed before he leaves office in 2023. Jeffrey Uzongo, Channels Television News.
When the news at 10 returns, more than 330,000 artisans to benefit from federal government's 75 billion naira micro, small and medium enterprises survival fund. And that will be on Business News. Please join us again. Welcome back to the news at 10. The Executive Secretary of the Tertiary Education Trust Fund, Professor Suleiman Bogoro, is recommending an annual funding of $1 billion to bridge the gap in the education research in the country. He made the recommendation during the inauguration of a standing committee on research and development and linked the nation's socio-economic development to adequate funding for research.
As competition between countries mount and global growth slows, the need to prioritize innovation, research and development has never been stronger. But while most people agree that the link between innovation and economic growth is incontrovertible, it is also complex, as convincing policymakers of its importance requires constant effort. In Nigeria, however, efforts by the present administration to prioritize research is receiving attention as funding has improved to about 12.5 billion naira in the past 2 years. One of the recent interventions by the government is the inauguration of a Research and Development Committee to drive socio-economic development.
Budgetary threshold of $1 billion. That is my suggestion, but we leave it to the committee to arrive at anything that they feel appropriate. I think that should be the minimum, $1 billion, and it is achievable.
Part of the Sustainable Development Goals 2030 recognizes the role of traditional and indigenous people as central to development. The federal government recognizes this and urges the Research and Development Committee to take the new responsibility seriously.
You've been summoned to a national service that is not to the rest of the 200 million people who are not as educated. You've been summoned to a national calling of immense depth that requires almost the all of you. A whelming from your being, a charge at the unseen, and to cut a path for a nation at sea.
The minister then inaugurates members of the committee.
I hereby inaugurate the Standing Committee, the National Board for Research and Development.
Committee members are expected to come up with research cutting across fields such as agriculture, environment, medicine, pharmaceuticals, solid minerals, as well as infrastructure, among others. The ultimate goal is to enhance socio-economic development through research.
Let's take a look at some business news now. Here's Teniola Shubowali.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Ijoma. Welcome to Business News. To commemorate Nigeria's 60th independence anniversary, the federal government has announced plans to disburse about 300 million naira to 333,000 artisans and transporters under the National MSME Survival Fund and the Guaranteed Offtake Stimulus Scheme. The states include Lagos, Bauchi, Kaduna, Kano, Plateau and Borno. Others are Ekiti, Anambra, Abia and the FCT. At a media briefing today in Abuja, the Minister of State for Industry, Trade and Investment, Ambassador Miriam Katagum, who is the chairperson steering committee of the scheme, says each beneficiary would be given a one-off payment of 30,000 naira. She explains that the target beneficiaries include hairdressers, fashion designers, mechanics, electricians, among others. Now, the acting chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, Mohammed Abbas, says the commission has recovered over 4.16 billion naira unpaid revenue from lottery companies. Speaking when a delegation of the Ministerial Task Force for Recovery of Unpaid Revenues from Lottery Businesses visited him, the EFCC boss explains that the anti-graft agency had mapped out strategies which resulted in the recovery of over 4.16 billion naira from lottery companies operating in Abuja, with over 3 billion naira from their counterparts operating in Lagos State. He notes that the EFCC had to intervene because lottery firms operating in the country were not forthcoming in remitting revenues that are due to the government. Ecobank Nigeria, a member of the Pan-African Banking Group, has hosted its first regional trade forum with the theme Facilitating Regional Trade in the Emerging AFCFTA Era. We'll have that report in just a moment, but in the meantime, investors of frontline global cement maker Dangote may now look forward to a silver lining in investment returns despite the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on its business. Top executives of the Nigerian and London Stock Exchange listed company give these indications at the virtual presentation of its sustainability report and markets briefing before the management of the Nigerian Stock Exchange.
In the last few years, transparency on environmental, social and corporate governance issues have become a major part of public company structures.
Today's event.
This trend informs the virtual and second edition of Dangote Cement's Sustainability Report presentation. Apart from its commitment to a world-class sustainable business, Dangote Cement successfully complies with other environmental, social and corporate governance performance within the 2019 calendar year.
Our 2019 socio-economic impact study shows that our patronage of local vendors generated 21,237 jobs and 66 billion naira in household income across our supply chain.
Following the supply chain disruptions emanating from the impacts of COVID-19, Dangote Cement has become more prudent with its resources.
One significant impact that we have seen is a lot of the energy costs that we utilize are or through importations in foreign currencies, and the pricing is usually pegged to US dollar, or direct pegging of the local supply that we get. For example, gas in Nigeria is pegged to US dollar. So evidently, when the currency is eroding against these foreign currencies, we have a negative impact on our bottom line.
We are acting like a responsible citizen in developing these technologies, aiming at cleaning countries, cleaning Nigeria, cleaning Africa. This is really what is at stake behind your questions.
While currency pressures remain the major constraint of multinationals in Africa, Dangote Cement has already hedged with its debt structure.
You can see from the capital and debt structure that they front-loaded their debt profile at the early stages when interest rates are low, and will take advantage of this in the future.
As Nigeria braces for the ratification of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement, Dangote, Africa's leader in cement and clinker export, is confident of broad range of returns via export earnings.
When we are not yet at 100%.
And now the EcoBank story. EcoBank Nigeria, a member of the Pan-African Banking Group, has hosted its first regional trade forum with the theme Facilitating Regional Trade in the Emerging AFCFTA Era. The forum was a platform to explore trade opportunities in Africa, particularly after the COVID-19 pandemic.
The first virtual regional trade forum by EcoBank Nigeria to examine the opportunities provided by the pandemic for Africa to take its place in global trade. The forum, with the theme Facilitating Regional Trade in Emerging AFCFTA Era, had exporters and importers within the African region exhibiting their products and participating in panel discussions by highly experienced and diversified stakeholders in the industry.
Our population is projected to reach 2.5 billion by 2050. There is the opportunity to gradually eliminate tariffs that are impeding intra-African trade and to boost intra-Africa trade significantly going forward.
While political will is required to support initiatives to develop infrastructure and facilitate trade, the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement creates more opportunities for regional trade.
There is an opportunity there on many of the products that we're seeking from outside the continent to source those within the continent. And for ECOWAS, that has a number of industrial powerhouses, we expect them to take opportunity of their production capacity.
I cannot ask Volkswagen to come and set up a manufacturing of cars in Togo just to serve Togo market. But they can set it up in Togo to serve West African market. They can set it up in Lagos to serve West African market. So that an investment opportunity is not just looking at individual fragmented countries, is looking at the whole continent.
Meanwhile, the Nigerian Export Promotion Council has decided to step in to help boost export capacity as the country gets set to ratify the agreement.
When you come into a trade agreement and you really have to regulate your borders and how goods move, then you must get all these certifications. And we can only do this by doing trainings for our exporters, for our farmers, for our producers, for our manufacturers, and get them to get those certifications.
EcoBank Nigeria, with its unrivaled footprint across Africa, is using its platform to facilitate cross-border trade within the region, leveraging its comprehensive trade solutions and various payment methods available across its network within the continent.
The Executive Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of WA Group, Abdul Samad Rabiu, has expressed excitement and readiness to work towards the implementation and success of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. The group's chairman believes that when fully operational, the free trade area will transform Africa's economy and enhance development across the continent. Mr. Rabiu expressed this while receiving the Secretary General of the AFCFTA, Wamkele Mene, and the Acting Director, National Office of Trade Negotiations, Victor Ofyong, at the BWA head office in Lagos State.
BWA Group is the first private organization visited by the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area, Wamkele Mene, in his maiden official visit to Nigeria. The Secretary General's meeting with the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer of BWA Group, Abdul Samad Rabiu, is in continuation of its consultation with government of signatory countries to the Free Trade Agreement and the private sector ahead of the full takeoff. While Nigeria's readiness to ratify the AFCFTA agreement is good news, the Secretary General maintains that implementing the agreement lies in the hands of the private sector.
Without the private sector, this agreement is meaningless. It can't be just for us trade negotiators. We've got to create opportunities for the private sector, African private sector. The others, they may come, but we must focus on boosting intra-Africa trade. And in my view, the vehicle for boosting intra-Africa trade is African, Pan-African private sector. As we implement this agreement, we do so in a way that is sufficiently responsive to the needs of the private sector.
infrastructure deficit is perceived as one of the challenges to the implementation of the agreement, but the chairman of BOA Group sees otherwise. He offers his opinion on the way forward for sustainable partnership.
I think the most important thing is for us to see how we can come together and partner together, private sector, AU partnership, and also look at how we can address and also maybe, revive the Trans-African highway. For us at BOA is something that I've always been very, very passionate about, because what we are doing, the businesses that we have, are just positioned for this. And if we are able to harness all the resources that we have in Africa, be able to produce whatever we have here locally, and be able to now open up the continent.
The conversation that ensued between BOA Group and the Secretary General of the African Continental Free Trade Area indicates that the vision of the free trade area could be achieved against all odds. So far, out of the 54 signatories, 28 countries have ratified the agreement.
Well, let's check in on the stock market now, with 25 gainers and 7 losers recorded on the price performance chart today. The stock market maintains a positive posture, posting its biggest gain in more than 6 weeks. Layo Adegoke has details of equities performance on the NSE.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. In line with analysts' expectation, the stock market sustained positive sentiments for the 4th day in this week as the bulls tossed the bears aside once again and emerged victorious at the close of today's trading. The market's main index ended the day higher by 0.79%, which is the biggest gain till date, while an additional 107 billion naira is added to the total list of valued equities. Traders attribute this improved sentiment to a shift by investors from the debt market as they consider the equities market to be a more viable investment option after the Debt Management Office cut its bond auction rates following the reduction in monetary policy rates by CBN MPC. Take a look at the sectoral performance. The consumer goods sector took the lead with 2.09% gain, which was largely driven by 10% increase on Nigerian Breweries share price, while gains from the banking and industrial goods sector overshadowed losses from oil and gas, as well as the insurance sector. For now, the bulls are in control of the market, and this trend is expected to continue at least till the end of September. We continue to keep our fingers crossed for more bargain hunting activities by investors. And that's the Stock Market Report. I'm Layo Adegoke.
Thanks a lot to Lyle. Meanwhile, after a volatile trading session, U.S. stock market managed to eke out some gains, with shares of Apple taking the lead in the rebound by tech shares. Meanwhile, here are some snapshots of closing figures of other major global markets for Thursday. And that's it on Business News Tonight. It's back to you, Ijoma.
Thanks, Teniola. And in Ondo State, Governor Rotimi Akeredolu is promising residents of the state that he'll continue his efforts at creating more jobs and ensuring economic development in the state if he is re-elected. Governor Akeredolu made the promise during the commissioning of Ondo Sunshine Chocolate Factory in Idori, a public-private partnership project. According to him, the 9 billion naira project will boost the state's portfolio as the largest cocoa-producing state in Nigeria, with its 60% capacity and 2% global contribution.
By the time it comes out, we have this.
The federal government has again reiterated that the nation's 60th independence anniversary celebration will be low-key because of the outbreak of COVID-19, even though the government has lined up a series of activities to commemorate the event. The Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, explains that the federal government has approved a list of activities staggered to the end of September 2021 to commemorate Nigeria's Diamond Jubilee. U.S. Republican leader Mitch McConnell has promised that there will be an orderly post-election transition despite whoever emerges as president, even though President Trump did not commit to that. Other Republican lawmakers, including vocal Trump ally Senator Lindsey Graham, have promised a safe and fair election. Here's Simon Pusey with more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Meanwhile, 2 police officers have been shot and wounded in Louisville in Kentucky in protests that have been sparked over the failure to prosecute any officers over the killing of Breonna Taylor.
Right there, officer down, right there, officer down, yes.
The jury ruled that 2 white policemen should not be prosecuted in connection with the death of Miss Taylor, a black medical worker who was shot in her own apartment, because their use of force during an ill-fated raid on her home was justified, but a 3rd officer was charged with endangering her neighbours. Street protests erupted in violence and 2 police officers on duty in the midst of the demonstrations were shot and wounded. Police said 1 suspect was arrested and the 2 officers are in a stable condition, but one of them has undergone surgery. Hong Kong police have arrested the democracy activist Joshua Wong for participating in an unauthorised assembly in October 2019 and violating the city's anti-mask law. The arrest adds to several unlawful assembly charges or suspected offences he and other activists are facing relating to last year's pro-democracy protests. These arrests have been made possible by the new sweeping national security law approved in June. Mr. Wong was later released on bail. West African leaders may lift painful economic sanctions against Mali once an interim president is inaugurated on Friday in the wake of the August the 18th military coup. The bloc's envoy praised the junta's leadership choice, suggesting the economic community of West African states could accept the candidates picked this week to lead the transition of power. The easing of sanctions would be a relief for Mali, whose imports have slumped 30% since its neighbours closed borders after the deposing of President Boubacar Ibrahim Keïta. Australian officials have begun planning the disposal of the almost 400 whale carcasses stranded on the Tasmanian beaches as hopes faded there would be any more survivors. In what is thought to be one of the world's biggest mass recorded beachings, rescuers had managed to free around 70 of the long-finned pilot whales beached on the Tasmanian coast. Officials said the majority of those freed had reached deeper water, but 4 were likely to be euthanized and others might return when the tide turns. Authorities are developing a plan to dispose of at least 300 whales at sea, an operation that could take days. Argentine doctors, nurses and other medical workers have taken to the streets of Buenos Aires to protest against their government's decision to ease lockdown measures. Marching down a main Buenos Aires avenue, the protesters drew attention to the plight of healthcare workers by carrying signs with the images of colleagues who have died from COVID-19. Argentina imposed a strict lockdown in March, but has seen infections soar in recent months, first gripping the capital Buenos Aires and surrounding areas and now spreading to the provinces. Vietnamese police have raided a warehouse that was found to be recycling and reselling used condoms. State broadcaster VTV carried footage showing dozens of large bags containing used condoms scattered across the warehouse. Police said that a total of 360 kilograms, an equivalent to 345,000 used condoms, were found in the warehouse. It is unclear how many recycled condoms have already been resold. And finally, a rare Botticelli portrait could join the restricted club of art masterpieces sold for more than $100 million when it goes up for auction in New York. The Renaissance painting Young Man Holding a Roundel is one of only around a dozen of Botticelli's portraits known to survive today. The 15th century work is expected to sell for more than $80 million at auction at Sotheby's in New York in January. It has the highest estimate in Sotheby's history, and the auction house said it could well sell for more than $100 million. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.
Thank you, Simon. Hello and welcome to Sports News. We begin with mixed martial arts. Nigerian UFC middleweight world champion Israel Adesanya says his levels above Paulo Costa, and he will prove it against the Brazilian at UFC 253. The 31-year-old puts his belt on the line against Costa early Sunday morning on Yas Island in just the second men's title bout in UFC history to feature 2 undefeated fighters.
like Roy Jones when he said, y'all must have forgot. Because, yeah, people forget, and fans are cool. They're sometimes dumb in droves, so I feel like I just have to remind them so they can be like, oh my God, oh, Israel's so good. He's just, wow, amazing. And their minds just get blown by the way I destroy this guy. He does have some technique, like he keeps his hands up when he throws hooks, body shots. He has his hands in the right places, but it's just the levels. There's levels to this. There's levels to this, and I just want to showcase that this weekend.
To football, Bayern Munich cannot stop winning at the moment as the German champions have beaten Sevilla 2-1 to win the UEFA Super Cup in Budapest. The two teams could not be divided after normal time after Lucas Campos' early penalty had been cancelled out by Leon Goretzka's 34th minute strike. However, moments after coming on in extra time, substitute Javier Martinez pounced to head in David Alaba's safe shot into an empty net to give Bayern the lead and ultimately the win. That's it on Sports News. Ijoma, back to you.
Many thanks, Olumide. And the main news again. Several persons were seriously injured today after a gas tanker exploded in the Ijuajuwon area of Lagos. The explosion also affected some buildings, cars and motorcycles in the area. Also today, the federal government and the organized labor continued their dialogue over the planned industrial action and protests against petrol and electricity price hike, but they could not reach an agreement as they have adjourned till Monday, September the 28th. And that's the news at 10 tonight. Thanks for staying with us. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Do have a good night.